Hey everybody, just a little quick video to respond to a member of Cinema Sound who had a great question on the sound effects forum. This is, I have no idea how to pronounce that, Visevolod, but he's responded in a couple of really great ways. I don't know how this is the right topic for this question, which it is. Thanks for putting in the right question in the sound effects forum. I'd like to learn about how Mark creates a deep reverberation from the dream or the main character's memories. Often in films we hear what is happening in the main character in the head or in their brain, I'm guessing. And basically, it's distant, deep voices with a long tail reverb. It does not always sound bright. At the moment, I only get a metallic sound. I cannot adjust the reverb deeply as in memories. Maybe I need to use delay plugins or something else. Thank you. Yes, well, this is a great question because this happens to us a lot. Choosing the right reverb and the right settings for the reverb can really assist in removing both that huge brightness that we experience when we, with reverb just kind of banging all over the place, and that weird metallic sound, which is actually caused by, in my experience, either or both bad reverbs that are just not really well programmed or settings that are wrong. So let's just take a look at that. We're here in Adobe Audition. I've got a little clip here from the action sequence from the Cinema Sound member 85-hour education, which you should all be a member of. So let's just listen to this by itself.
Only the most daft of rats tries to sail a sinking ship. Your choices have caught up with you, sister.
Now, obviously, this is me, and this is actually recorded as an example of how to replace dialogue with some other actor's ADR, which we show you how to do. You'll also notice there's reverb in there, that a small amount of room reverb. That's actually built, we built that into it, so it helped with the mix, which again, we teach you how to do in the center channel.
Only the most daft of rats.
So it's a little bit in there. Otherwise, it's just dead dry. So sometimes it's helpful to add a little mono, and I say mono reverb to your dialogue tracks, but that won't affect us in what we're about to show you how to do. So let's look up one of my favorite reverbs. And although Adobe Audition has some great reverbs in it, including an amazing 5.1 reverb, let's look at from our friends at Waves. This is the h-reverb long stereo. The h-reverb is, as you can see, a ton of really cool bits to it. Sort of looks like the chest of Darth Vader. You don't have to use the long version. There is a regular version, which takes a lot less CPU power. But for this purpose, since we want to create something that's, kind of dreamy and whooshy, we want to have that extra long reverb time. So let's just look at these parameters. You first see this cool thing, which sort of shows you how the reverb is doing, what it is doing. You have the reverb time in seconds. Right now it's 4.25 seconds. You have the various kinds of early reflections. That's what ER stands for. And I like to have something that's a little obtuse like this. And then you have the pre-delay in milliseconds. How long in milliseconds before the reverb starts being heard? And then how big is this room? And then the ER versus tail, and you'll see this on every reverb, the initial reflections versus the reverb itself. How much of those do we want to hear? Do we want to hear 50-50, all initial early reflections, or all tail? And then, of course, dry, wet, just the dry signal, wet, and then how loud. The rest of this we're going to get to in a second. But let's just check this out. We're going to turn it on. There we go. At 4.25 seconds. Well, right away, you're really close into that dream sequence, V. I'm just going to call you V, for lack of a better term, because I can't pronounce your name. So let's just adjust some of these, and I'll show you what happens here. So just the dry, wet.
Only the most daft of rats tries to sail a sinking ship.
And when you were doing this, you would want to have a bus that you had routed your reverb to so that you're not just taking up resources on putting a reverb like this on a single track, because you may want other dialogue to also use it, so you want to bus it. So we would always want on a bus this setting to be always wet. But for here, we'll just kind of do maybe a 60%.
Only the most daft of rats tries to sail a sinking ship.
Now that's with the tail all the way over. Let me show you what it's like with early reflections all the way over.
Only the most daft of rats tries to sail a sinking ship.
Here it feels like you're in a kind of closed, tight room, And that's important because every room has these early reflections. But for a dream sequence, we don't really need to deal with those early reflections. We want something otherworldly. So we typically want to have this all the way over on full tail. Now let's run this reverb time way up to say 10 seconds or so.
Only the most daft of rats tries to sail a sinking ship. Your choices have caught up with you.
I mean, that's a big, long haul of reverb. And if we make it all wet, that's pretty wild. But one of the things you're noticing is it's very bright. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on. And that's one of the things that V talks about that he doesn't want. And I agree, we don't want all those high frequencies in there. And most good algorithmic or convolution reverbs have two aspects of how to change the sound. One is the regular EQ, which is sort of useful, and then the damping, which is far more useful. Right now, we're having already a high frequency roll off. Look what happens if I turn this off by just sliding this. Oh, I can turn this off like that. It just sounds like noise for sure. So we always want to have some kind of an EQ roll off. But we might want to have more, and that's where we want to come to damping. And damping isn't just an EQ, it's a more part of an algorithmic program that helps, kind of make it sound like the room is darker, maybe more carpet or something, I don't know. Which is much nicer, I think, than this. So let's drop this down a little bit here. You can add a lot of the good algorithmic reverbs have a modulation section, which really helps add kind of life to what otherwise can be dead sounding algorithmic reverb. So let's turn this on, and you have, a modulation, how much of it, how fast of it. I usually like to have it very, very slow, and then the mix we experiment here. Let's check it out. So that's theoretically what it's doing when you get it to a 50-50. So let's make that rate really slow and the depth kind of minimal. It's a very, very, very subtle amount. Now, if you wanted something really Zulu, of course, you could do this 50-50 here, at least on h-reverb, which is it's sort of acting like a flanger. All right, so this is sort of an easy way to figure this out. Let's look at that size knob now. And what's happening is it's changing the virtual size of the room while keeping the time the same. Now, you're usually you hear a really bad result when you have a situation where you have a small size room with a long tail. That usually pushes that mathematical algorithm to its limits, like we talk about in one of our other algorithms, and that's where you start getting that metallic sound. Same if you have a density situation, you have the density very low. You can see how it's changing. Check this out. And if you have a very small room, like especially if we move it down here somewhere in the 3-second zone, you start getting weirdness, and sometimes these can become so compressed that you get that metallic sound. So I like having density up. I like having the room size up as far as I can without making some kind of weird sound in the front. And then if you want to clean up the dialogue, although it's supposed to be a dream sequence, what you can do, I'll just bring this back so you can hear the difference.
Only the most daft of rats.
Right now, the reverb is right up on top of the voice. If I use a pre-delay, like let's say 40 milliseconds or 50,
only the most daft of rats.
The voice has a time all on its own to be heard before that reverb comes in. And I can turn it way up if I want and really make it, you can hear the difference.
Only the most daft of...
So it's literally a delay. So we can add a little bit of that if we want to clean up the voice.
Only the most daft of rats.
But since it's a dream sequence, we'll want to make it fully wet and no pre-delay. All right, so this is h-reverb. Let's check out another reverb. This is r-verb, again from Waves, another algorithmic reverb. It's sort of the same kind of idea. You've got reverb damping here and reverb EQ here. Here's your pre-delay, which we'll turn off. Now notice it has a negative pre-delay, which could be really cool. Check this out. There's a regular pre-delay. Here's negative pre-delay by 160 milliseconds. It's coming in early, which is cool. But for us for now, we will just call this 0. Let's run this time way up. Let's make the size 0 and see how this reverb does. Now that's the metallic sound that perhaps V you were talking about. And that's when you've got those settings for a reverb really wrong. Now reverb is a great verb, but if you put any reverb in bad settings, you're going to have weird sounds. And this could be a really cool effect if you wanted that, especially if you wanted to add modulation to it later. It could add a really cool sound. But we typically don't want this. So I like, as a rule, having the size as big as I can, unless it's affecting the sound, and then moving the time around with diffusion all the way up. That's what I like. Now, for this purpose, we would definitely want that damping down. So that's one version of it, but here we can also change the hall. So let's look at church. This is a different algorithm. And if you've got the gold bundle, you won't have the h-verb, but you will have the r-verb and the true verb, which is almost exactly the same, just a little bit less mellow. And you might think, well, this feels kind of sterile to me. Well, what you can do is add delay. And, every digital audio workstation has a delay. You can add a straight delay if you'd like. Hey, where did we go? There we are. This is H delay, but every delay has the same thing, and it's the easiest thing for me to teach on. So I have it after the reverb. You can put it before or after. Let's try it after. And I have it on ping pong, which means it's going left to right, left to right, left to right. You can turn up the feedback and make some crazy effects. That's useful, right? It makes it kind of really even more Zulu. But what happens if we put the reverb after the delay? And if you add a lot more feedback, right? That's pretty cool stuff, having the delay also get reverbed. If you wanted to have it, more of a delay effect, then you put the delay first. I'm sorry, the reverb first. So that's just in routing and placement how you'd like it. Then let's add one more element. This is the Waves Mondo modulation that really can make it Zulu. I'm going to put the delay first. And I've just pulled up the full rotor. Where is it? The full rotor preset. No big deal. Gives it a cool, another element to it. Let's just add how about Doppler mover? So it adds some more Zulu quality to it. So hopefully this helps you know how you can add some really cool, otherworldly kinds of effects to a dream sequence without creating that metallic reverb sound or having something that's way too bright. Use damping, use that EQ built into the reverb, and then if you can, use some kind of a modulation to help stretch it out. I'll show you one more thing. One of the things that's cool is you can add two reverbs together. Now I'm going to have the H reverb, the H delay, and the R verb put together. And you could add any number of reverbs with good settings together and create an awesome result.
Even if you're stuck